All right, I wanted to create a video here to talk about some of the calculator operations we're using in class. First thing I'll say is I would encourage you to save this as a bookmark. If you go to ti84calc.com, if you don't have the TI-84 calculator at home, this is a free version of the identical calculator we're using in class. You might get an occasional ad pop up since it's free, but you can close it out. I've been using it a lot if you've seen in class, and it's very easy to use and just gives you that same calculator we have in class at home at the same time. All right, let me go back to, I'm just going to use this example here to talk through some of the operations we've been doing in the calculator. So this problem's talking about the number of students in school chorus has increased since school first opened 6 years ago. The table of values represents the change of students in the school chorus, where X represents the year and Y represents the number of students. So here's our X values, the years, our inputs, our outputs, the Y value, the number of students. Okay, so first, if we want to get that linear regression equation from our calculator, I'm going to go to the calculator. I'm going to actually write these numbers out so I don't have to flip back and forth. So our X are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Our Y's are 22, 36, 40, 59, 78, and 83. All right, so on the calculator, if we want to get the linear regression equation, we're going to hit that button that says stat. You see it's two buttons to the right of the green button, just to the right of the button we use for X. And then we're going to click enter on edit, because that's what we want to do. We want to go ahead and edit the table. Now you notice my table here already has some values in there. These are ones I had in there earlier. You might be using a calculator. Somebody in class had some values in there earlier. If we want to clear those out, you just use the right and left and up and down arrows to move around your table, and go highlight the very top of that list where it says L1 and just hit clear, enter. And that will clear out that column in your table. Now avoid using the delete button. Now I'm going to show you why. If I go highlight L1 and click delete, L1 goes away, which causes a lot of problems. I've seen students in the past, even on STAR, do something like that, and then they want help trying to get it back, and we cannot help you during that test to do anything on your calculator. So at this point, you have two options. You can reset your calculator, which is second plus 712, second plus 712. And we'll talk about that over and over again in class, especially leading up into STAR, so you can just memorize how, if your calculator's kind of lost its mind, how you can get it back to those factory reset settings. Or, I'm going to delete that again on accident, or if you want to get it back, if you hit that stat button again and go down and click setup editor, click enter. Once it's on your home screen, you have to click enter again. It'll say done. Now when I go back, my list 1 is back. All right, so we're going to take those X values and put them under L1. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we're going to put our Y values under L2, 22, 36, 40, 59, 78, and 83. Now, I always tell everyone at this point, look at your two lists, double check that you make sure you put the numbers in correct, because the number one mistake I see, especially once you get comfortable doing this, is you'll start going fast, putting in your numbers, and you type one number in wrong, you can do everything else right, and now the calculator is using the wrong data to give you the linear regression equation. It's going to give you an equation, but it's not going to be right because you put in numbers that were incorrect. So make sure you take your time, going careful, putting in your X and Y's, and that you have all the numbers in correct. Something else I want to show you, let's say I accidentally, let's see, clear, enter. I'm just trying to clear one number here. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to clear the list and start over because I do want to show you this. 22, 36, 40, 59, 78. I'm going to leave the last one off for now. So let's say you maybe skipped over a number, and you should realize it because your lists are not the same length at this point. But I wanted to show you what the calculator says if you don't catch that and you try to do linear regression. So now if we go to stat, over to calculate, and we click linear regression, and go down and click calculate, the calculator is going to tell you error dimension mismatch. It means we have more x values in this case than we input y values. We don't have the same dimensions there. So if you see that, just go back, look at your table, and realize, oh, I left off a number there, or I skipped over a number maybe as I input all my x's and y's. All right, so once we have our x's and y's entered, again, we go back to that same button. Everything goes to that stat button. Go over to calculate, use the right arrow, and option 4 there is linear regression. Later on in the year, we'll use 5 for quadratic regression, and then down at the very bottom, we can't see on the screen, but exponential regression too. But only working with linear right now, so option 4, linear regression. Click enter. Again, a lot of y'all were asking today, well, what do I do if I get to this screen? Just go down and click calculate. All this is telling us is we're going to use L1 for our x list, L2 is our y's. So we're going to click calculate, and here's our equation. So it's telling us they use A for slope. So our slope, and we'll round to 2 decimal places unless I tell you differently. So 2.86 would be our slope, and our y-intercept, our b value, would be 20.86. So if we go back now to our notes, our linear regression equation there, and this is in the review we were working with today in class. So y equals 12.86x plus 20.86. Now, a couple other things. The R value, the correlation coefficient. If we go back to the calculator, and to make this show up on your calculator, we got to go into the catalog and add and turn on diagnostics. So if you see the 0 button in blue, it says catalog. We're going to hit second 0. And you got to scroll all the way down because it's in alphabetical order, so we got to get to the D's, and we're going to go find diagnostic on. So you want to click enter on that, and then click enter again. Once it says done, it's turned on. Now if I go do that same step, linear regression, and click calculate, it's going to give me the R value. So the R value, not the R square we're looking at, the correlation coefficient, R is 0.96. We could round that too. So as we talked about in class, 1 would be perfectly positive. The closer we get to 1, the closer we are to that being perfectly linear in a positive correlation. -1 would be perfectly negative, and close to 0 is when we're talking about no correlation. So 0.96 we could round this to, definitely a positive correlation. So that R value, if I can get my screen to move, there we go. R value would be 0.9. Was it 0.98 or 0.96? I think I wrote it wrong. 0.985, so 0.99 actually, my fault. I think I was missing it there, so 0.99. So very good, positive, strong correlation on that one. All right, the other thing we could do now that we have that equation, we can use it to make predictions in our data. So if we go back to the calculator, and we go to y equals, and this skill is going to come up a lot. We're going to use it a lot this year for a variety of reasons, but anytime we have an equation and we want to see a table of x and y values, we can go back to y equals, and we're going to type our equation in. So 12.86x, again, x is the button to the right of the green button, plus 20.86. Now if we want the table, if you see the very top right button that says graph, above it in blue says table. So again, anytime we want the blue option on that button, we're going to hit that blue second button first. So second graph brings up our table. So there we can make predictions. Year 0 was the year the school was opened, and then year 1 would be year after that, year 2, and so on. So if we wanted to say, what about year 15? We could scroll down to 15 and make a prediction off that data what we would expect in year 15 for that number, for that output to look like. In this case, we rounded it maybe 214. Okay, so we can use that to make predictions along the way. Now, something else you can do in your calculator, if you go to table setup, you see the window button above the mode button there. It says blue table set. If we hit second table set, there's some things we can change here. I always like to go back and put the table starting at 0, but let's say you need to go find an X value, an input value that's like 2,000. Instead of scrolling all the way down to 2,000, we can just go start our table at 2,000. And now when I go to the table, it's going to start my x values at 2,000. So I don't have to scroll forever. Or let's say I need to see some decimals. Let's say I want to make it count by 0.1, so count by a tenth instead of 1. I can go change that delta table. Remember that triangle means change in. So what is my table changing by? I'm going to make it count by 0.1 or a tenth. So now when I go back, it starts at 0 and it counts 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, and so on. Also, what you can do, again, I'm going to go back and just make it change to count by ones. Let's say instead of seeing the whole table, I want to have it where I can just ask it for a certain input. So if you go to independent variable and change auto to ask, and now we go back to the table, your table is going to look blank. And what you can do now is say, I want to know about the input, the x value of 2,356. I can type that in, click enter, and that'll give me the output, the y, again, without having to scroll all the way through that table up and down constantly. Now, one key thing, if you do all this, we got to be able to get it back to how we started. So you can either reset it, like I mentioned earlier, with second plus 712, or go back to that table setup and just change it back to all the defaults, which is table start at 0, change in table 1, and then change the independent back to auto. Now when we go to our table, it's going to be back starting at 0 and counting by ones again. Okay, so those are the main things we're using on the calculator right now. As the year goes, where you do other things in the calculator, I make some more videos on some different calculator operations. But again, to summarize, the main button we're going through for linear regression is that stat button. So stat, enter on edit, put in your x's and y's in L1 and L2, go back and click stat again, over to calculate, and down to linear regression. And that will give you your linear regression equations. There we'd have a slope again of 12.86 and a y-intercept of 20.86.